Alright, here we are with a running analysis of Zach Benson. I'm Mike Finn, head coach, SwimBikeRun Sports. This was taken November, when was it? It was November 18th, 2015. Zach is a pretty avid athlete, has lots of experience in the gym, has just been recently getting into endurance sports, endurance running, endurance fitness, aerobic fitness. He's a chiropractic student, so this was taken in the afternoon. This was about minute 6 of a 10-minute run. Try to get some fatigue in the body, see some natural motion here. Just try and get to the middle. So pretty straightforward. We're going to do a run mechanics breakdown. We're going to look at 5 or 6 different angles. These angles that I reference are from the USA Triathlon run mechanics guide. So looking up your run mechanics, if you see any discrepancies in angles as to what shouldn't be, we can discuss those, but this is my reference point, and it should be pretty close to what you find. It's going to be difficult to say that we're so far off that what I got for you isn't really relevant. So to jump right into it, we're going to look at your back extension. That's how far your thigh goes behind your body from vertical, that full recovery extension. So I like to pick on the leg closest to camera. It allows me to not worry about superimposing. So we're looking at how far back your leg goes after it comes off the ground, right about there. Zach's got a yellow shirt on, so we're going to use yellow. We want this to be greater than 20 degrees. We try to go from the hip straight down, and then from that same point through the knee, 27 degrees. Very good. Good back extension. You fire in the hamstrings as you come off the ground. You are worth noting here. Of all the angles we go through, if we find a mistake, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, Zach, you don't know that you're doing it, that you're deficient in that area. So it's only fair to say that the things you do well, you are also unaware that you do. So while we note things that are good and poor, what we want to do is make sure we focus on not losing the good as we correct the poor, mostly because the kinetic chain that is the human body, you affect one thing, you affect them all. So just keep this in mind as we go forward. But your back extension, very strong, more than enough to keep the stride length efficient as you go through your gait. So back extension, that looks good. Let's take a look at the forward lean. We'll get rid of this. We'll go forward 1 step. So your forward lean is how far ahead of your hip is your ear, and we look for that to be really, the best way to find it is right at toe off. There we go. So once again, we take the hip, we go straight up, and then we take that point, and then we go through the ear. We want that to be greater than 6 degrees and less than, I believe, 18 degrees. So that way you're not running, hunched over, but then you're not running straight up and down like you're marching. This is really to protect the head and the spine from too much impact absorption after each impact of the foot. So forward lean looks good. You're not too far forward. You're not too far up. Something to just keep in mind, you definitely want your ear to be slightly in front of your hips as you go forward. And this is more of a protection for injury, prevention of injury, than it is going to make you faster, so to speak. So here comes my favorite angle that we look for, and this is knee drive. This is the one that I found to be most efficient in amateur runners, myself included. I looked at my own. It's not as good as it should be. So your knee drive is how far your knee lifts from the vertical, and we're testing how well you snap your hip flexors. So back extension relies on hamstrings, while knee drive relies on iliopsoas and the accompanying hip flexor muscles. So how far forward do you get your knee before it begins to come backwards? And it looks like it's right there. So we want this to be greater than 45 degrees. So once again, we go from the hip, we go straight down, then we go from the hip to the knee, and 42 degrees. So really, that's negligible. We're right on 45-ish. So that's about right, but that's the minimum. If you need a 70 to pass, you've got a 71. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It'll get you where you got to go, but we can improve on it. So this is really done through two ways. One, just know you don't bring your knee up enough. Two, start practicing bringing your knee up. And it's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel like you're high stepping, like you're marching. It's going to not feel natural. The reason why is because it's absolutely not natural. This is not something that is natural for you, Zach, to do, because if it was, you'd be doing it. So the way Zach is running is just hop on a treadmill and go run. So you're not thinking about what you're doing, you're simply going through the motion. So now we're going to start thinking about what it means to run correctly, and that includes getting your knee up. 45 degrees is the minimum. They recommend 50 to 55. You'll achieve maximum efficiency. The benefit to an increased knee drive is you now have an increased stride length, as well as you'll have an increased stride rate. Both of those things result in speed. So I know I'm sure I've said this before. I don't know if Zach, you've heard me say this, but speed is a consequence of good form. You don't run faster over long distances by saying, I'm going to go run fast today. You run correctly, and your body will run more efficiently, and then you'll be able to run faster, longer, and using less energy. It's starting to start all with your knee drive. I believe this is the number one thing to focus on as we go forward, and then the rest of it we make sure doesn't get too far out of control as we move on in the step. So we're going to advance this a little bit. Zach, you started out pretty fast on the treadmill. I remember watching your pace, and it was pretty strong. I asked you to give me a pace that you would hold for about an hour, and if you can hold that pace for an hour, you're doing pretty good. So the goal would be then to attack your efficiency and make sure you're not wasting energy. But about 5 minutes in, you did slow the treadmill down a little bit. This is not so much a mistake as it is something to keep in mind exactly what it means to run for an excessive amount of time. Because if you want to do a half marathon or a marathon, you're going to be running for an hour 45 to 3.5 hours. I mean, that's a long time, and you want to try and make sure that your first step looks like your last step. All right, so knee extension. We're looking at the knee angle at full extension. This is just after knee drive. How far do you kick your lower leg out? Right. So basically, how straight does your leg get right before it touches the ground? And that's it right there. So we want this to be less than 165 degrees. So we're going to go from the hip to the knee. This one's tough. There we go. And there. Down. That angle's probably a little off. I'm going to say that that's probably like 155. So we do have, but we want less than 165. And so we've got it. So your leg, you don't kick your leg straight out, and you've got a lock knee, and you're about to land on something that provides no cushion or support. So that's pretty straightforward. It looks really good. Doesn't seem to be too much to worry about there. And Zach, that was pretty consistent through your entire 10 minutes that you were on that treadmill and I watched you. So I'm going to make that 155 for the sake of this knee compression angle, which is exactly how far do you bend your knee when it's directly under you. And what this is doing is you're catching your body, because your body is falling. When both feet are off the ground, your body is falling down due to gravity. So you have to catch your body. And while catching, you need to make sure you're being as efficient as possible, absorbing impact, and making sure your body continues to go forward. Because while it's very remedial, the point of running is to go from A to B. And so we want everything that's taking place to provide that maximum A to B direction. So we had 155 degrees on knee extension. So now we're going to look at knee compression, which is taken by this angle of your hip to knee. That's not your hip. Your hip to knee, and then down. I'm going to say that's probably 135-ish, 155. So you got a 20 degrees there. And we want your knee compression to be less than 25 degrees. So to repeat what we just did there, we took the angle of your knee extension, we took the angle of your knee compression, and we subtracted them. And we want that to be less than 25 degrees. What that means is there's not a lot of angle change in your knee as you go from to extension to impact to mid stance to toe off. You don't want too much bend, but then you do have to have some. If you have too much bend, then you're wasting energy catching your body on the way down. You have too much vertical motion and not enough horizontal motion. So that looks really good. But something to keep in mind is when you increase your knee drive, and now you pick your knee up further, and you kick your foot out, and then it impacts the ground, this is going to change your knee extension. It's all going to change your knee compression. But it looks like without really trying, you have a really good knee compression. I'm really interested to see what changes take place after we address your knee drive. And then the hidden angle in the side position, and one of my personal favorites is the elbow angle. Something that many people don't think about. We don't run with our hands, we run with our feet. Or do we? So your elbow angle, you want to keep your elbows close to the body. The further away from the body they get, then you increase various vectors that are pulling in different directions that you now have to counterbalance, as well as use energy to fight in your efforts to continue going forward. So the closer we keep your arms to the body, the less left and right, up and down movement that you have to counterbalance while you continue to push forward in the run. So let's take a look at your elbows. You really want your elbows to always be less than 90 degrees. You watch the best runners in the world, their elbows very rarely get much greater than 65 degrees. But 90 is of course, maximum elbow flexion of the biceps. So if we can keep it under that, then your bicep is never, we'll say, fully having to flex to pull your arm up past 90, and you're wasting upper body energy that we need to go to continue for the legs to go forward. So let's take a look at see if we can't find where you really kind of drop the ball. You are holding your phone in your hand, which is something to keep in mind, but that isn't too much of a problem in this situation. Here to here, why didn't those hook up? Those didn't hook up either. Well, I'm going to just go ahead and say that's about a little greater than 90. Doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. Let's see where we get up there. So at this point, your hand is a little in front of you. It's further away from the camera than the elbow. So that's probably, let's just see if this thing will measure it. We've lost our ability to measure angles here. It's annoying. But anyway, you do bring your hand up. It's going to be less than 90, much less than 90. As we go forward in the stride, something to think about is you want to try and keep your hand from falling down right there. That's about 90 degrees, spot on. You want your hand to be a little up higher. Simple drill. While you're running, just shove your thumbs in your armpits and learn what it's like to run like that. It's a gross over-exaggeration. It's by no means how you're going to run on race day and how you need to run for the rest of your life, but it does give you an idea of what it means to not have your arms flailing, so to speak. And Zach, your arms don't flail, but that's just simply the word I happen to pick to describe it. But the less, we'll say, turbulence that you give your body while you're running forward, then the less energy you have to spend fighting that and increasing your efficiency in the A to B direction. So overall, really solid, really strong. Zach, you don't have much of a problem, I think, as far as your overall mechanics. A few couple changes here and there. We're going to take a look at you from the posterior view here in the next video, and hopefully we can address a couple things as well as your arm angle. Keep that in mind. This was video 1 of 3. We're going to move on to video 2 of 3 once again. SwimBikeRun Sports, Coach Mike Finn. We'll see you in the next video.